Thank you. Kevin, am I good? Or are you going to? Okay, I don't want to get on your bad side like he did. Uh, we got a little refresher here. Abby came and spoke to us a couple of years ago before she was a member, and I had her come speak to us about her background. And really, today she doesn't need an introduction, but I have to do this so I can get my picture in the paper. And but anyway, uh, Abby's a Pittsburgh. We were fortunate. Abby was a Pittsburgh native, and then a Morgantown, West Virginia high school graduate. Then came to Oklahoma State and got undergrad, master's, and PhD. She's the director of the Center for the Future of Work at the Spears School. Before joining Oklahoma State, she was in HR in the energy and manufacturing business. She's got a PhD, like I mentioned, with research interests in the areas of mindfulness, attention, and the changing landscape of work. So, Abby, come on up, and thanks for coming back and doing this.
Thank you. I've got two co-presenters to bring up with me. Oliver and Kyler, will you come on up? Kevin, can you hear me? Am I good? Okay, great. I've got two student presenters that are going to co-facilitate this with me, and so I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves. Kyler, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, major, all that fun stuff?
So my name's Kyler Baldwin. I'm from Davis, Oklahoma, so South Central Oklahoma. I'm studying accounting and MIS at Oklahoma State. So big business guy, but yeah, that's pretty much all about me.
Great. And Oliver?
Hello, my name is Oliver Homan. I'm originally from Wisconsin, but I've been in DFW area for a while now. I'm a senior studying MIS and computer science.
So both of these students, actually, I'm gonna have you hold the mic. Both of these students work with my husband, Evan Davis, in what's called the Spears Assist Lab. Did I get that right? And so they are helping students when it comes to their business analytics courses. And then they're also working on a number of projects. And so this is a project that we pulled them in on. A lot of the visualizations that you're seeing today, these two guys helped me with that. And so we're gonna dive on in. We have a lot of information to get through. We're gonna hit the high notes on some of this because we really wanna make sure that you have a chance to ask questions on some of these data points. So as I jump in, this is our research team, our work trends research team, so you can see there's a number of students that helped us with this. Kyler and Oliver, though, definitely pulled the most weight when it came to helping create the data visualization, so I'll move on from there. Our goal is to really focus on, okay, we keep talking about workforce development, the state keeps talking about, the governor's talking about, there's workforce commission. What is workforce development, and more importantly, who is responsible for it? And so our goal of this report that is yet to be released yet, you're getting a sneak peek preview, is to help people understand what are all of the different aspects that influence workforce development. So we have a definition there that I won't read in detail, but you can see that. But the importance around who is responsible for it, how our educational institutions, how our schools are preparing students, how organizations are helping to ensure that their employees are getting the training and development that they need, how organizations are responding to different type of societal impacts or technology that impact their work, and then also, of course, our legislators, those at the state level, and how they impact workforce development, and how we can support individuals as they undergo different life transitions. Workforce development, there is no single person that's responsible for it. Everyone in this room is at a certain degree, and so we want to help ensure that we all know the role that we play in this equation. And so the goal of the data that you're going to see today is to really have a comprehensive view of what are all the different things that impact workforce development and beyond some of the things that we just think about. Now, before I hand it over, I'm going to hand it over to Kyler here in a second. I will tell you that our intention today was to go through the results of a study that we conducted last year. And specifically, Kyler has spent a lot of time preparing all of the information on that study. However, if we are coming across scrambled, it's because Tuesday afternoon, as I was doing one more paranoid sweep of the data to ensure that there wasn't anything fishy, we found some interesting patterns. And so we're currently investigating what we think could have been a bot that hacked our survey, and maybe that bot even had some political motivation behind it. So we are in the process of analyzing all of that. It's new to me. It's new to everyone here. I've reviewed it with some of our top researchers and methodologists at Spears, and like, yep, this is the first time we've seen something like this. So I'm obviously not going to go through that data with you because I don't know which parts of it are valid, and so we're in the process of doing that. So I apologize For those of you that took that survey for us last year, thank you. We will have results that we can go through with the general public, hopefully in the not too distant future, but we've got to scrub it to get any, we'll call them Putin bots now, for now, out of our survey to see what was going on there. Am I handing it over to you first?
Yep.
Okay, so Oliver's going to hit just some population stats at a high level, and we're going to be pretty quick on all of these so that we can get a chance to answer any questions that you may have. So give us the high notes here.
Okay, so you can see there's a list of counties that we've had some growth in, we've had some fluctuations go on the downhill trend as well. The big thing I want to point out here, you can see that little paragraph at the bottom. We've actually had quite a bit of migration into the state from other states. So it's been about 50,000 from 2022 to 23. So it's been a big movement into the state. If you move on to that next slide, and then this is some age fluctuations that we've seen in the population. Two big things that I want to point out. The first is the biggest changes that we're seeing are towards an older population, so population leaving the workforce. And then the other thing is if you look in that under 5 years, that 5 to 14, what that's telling us is we don't have big populations that are going to be entering into the workforce anytime soon. So that's not necessarily a big concern for us, but it's something to note that we're not going to be seeing a big influx into the workforce, and that's just something that employers are going to need to keep in mind. So pass it off to Kyler.
So moving on to the labor force participation statistics that we pulled, Oklahoma had a participation rate of 62.5, and the national average was 62.7. So we're right in line with that national average. And then on this graph, you can see in 2020, of course, with COVID, there was that trough. And then moving into 2023, we've seen an uptick in that. So that's a good thing for the labor force, more people participating.
One thing that I'll add here, so you take what Oliver just said about population trends. We've been talking about labor force participation a lot, right? We have now bounced back to higher than pre-pandemic levels. So the available people that are out there to work, for the most part, they're working. And when we look at, the people that aren't, that population that are of working age, I believe 25% of them are over the age of 50. And so we have people in the workforce, and we don't have a flood of humans coming back into the workforce anytime soon. And so that's something that we need to keep in mind, and we'll come back to that point here in just a little bit. I think there are solutions that are available, but it's helpful to know what these numbers are, how they're waving out.
Then as far as unemployment goes, in Oklahoma it was 2.83, so we actually beat the national average on that. And then with the child care data that we pulled, just looking into how many children had parents in the workforce and how that affects the landscape of child care in Oklahoma. So 64.5 had both parents in the workforce. So we're seeing a lot of children with both parents in the workforce, and that's just something to look at for how we can provide for those children.
So we've seen a big decline in facilities from like 2017 to 2021. We're starting to bounce back from that. Notice that the total all capacity is now increasing at a pretty big rate. I don't think, Kyler, we have it in there. So couple of House bills that passed. One that was decreasing regulations for in-home daycares to make it easier. There was, though, a piece of legislation. I wish Trish is here, but I know that she's in session right now. She could update us a little bit on it. There were proposed employer tax incentives and child care worker tax incentives. Everything that I've seen, that's frozen somewhere. I don't know if it's completely dead in the water, but when we talk about child care and making that more affordable and accessible, I think incentivizing employers is a really good strategy that we can use to help solve that issue.
Then looking at the poverty statistics, income for the past 12 months was 15.7 compared to the national rate of 11.5. So the poverty statistics in that age group, or that group, were higher than the national average. And then
I'd hit on this one, female householder.
Female householders with no spouse present, so that's just solely the female householders, were 29.1 compared to married couples at 16.2. So that category is a lot higher than what we'd expect to see.
And if you look at poverty by age, the biggest bar there is under the age of 5. And so we've got a lot of work to do, specifically when it comes to single parents in our communities in Oklahoma, because we don't want to see that 0 to 5 as the largest age category in poverty. And these are statewide statistics, not focused on Payne County. All right, so Oliver is going to talk to us about untapped talent pools, and these are the areas, as we said, in general, people are working, so where can we get more humans that can help work? There are some talent pools that we need to focus on that we've got potential with.
So leading off with disability, you can see kind of an age and gender breakdown on the side there, but the real thing that I want to focus on is that table, and specifically that last row, because you can see a flip there between that those with disability are actually higher than those without disability for getting a high school degree and even getting a 2-year degree. However, that flips drastically once you go to a bachelor's degree or higher. So we don't necessarily know the reason for that. However, that's a really interesting flip, and it's a pretty drastic flip at 15%. So that's just a good thing to keep in mind. And then if we go a little farther in, we can see an actual breakdown of what disabilities are categorized as. And you can also see the actual employment rate there. So what I want to point out here is there's quite a few different types of disabilities that employers have got a good handle on. Visual disabilities, hearing disabilities, but as we get into more specific types, things like self-care, independent living, employers are having a hard time adapting to those disabilities. So if we want to take advantage isn't the right word for it, but utilize this untapped population and get them into the workforce, we need to start thinking about how to better utilize this population and better help them achieve the working status and better help them along into the workforce.
So one of the things that we hear a lot about now is neurodiversity, and so specifically individuals that may ADHD, ADD, autism spectrum. So those are people that can have a disability that employers, there's no real good handbook, right, on how to provide accommodations. It's very much on a case-by-case basis. And there's a lot of work to do in that area. And so we wanted to bring light to the types of disabilities. And yes, those employment with disability and without disability is huge. So we have a lot of opportunity in our state to ensure that we're doing everything that we can to help individuals with disabilities and engage them with the workforce.
So moving on to those with justice involved background. The big thing that I want to point out here is female incarceration. For the longest time, Oklahoma has always been said to have the #1 of all 50 states in female incarceration. That is no longer the case. We're down to #4. Obviously, that's still not the best statistic.
We're making progress.
Yes, it's progress. So the other thing of note here is, as far as non-violent crime goes, the biggest category there is drug and alcohol crime. So we want to look at ways to minimize that as far as just involved crime goes.
So there's been a lot of attention on different House bills, state questions, and all of that have been aimed to help with this. So a lot of this was State Question 780, 781 that a lot of you remember around in prison reclassifying drug and property felonies as misdemeanors. Sorry. House Bill 3316, which came into law in 2022, which simplified the process of expunging a criminal record for certain situations. There's 2 bills that are still pending. Some of you have probably heard of Ban the Box initiatives, and so there is Senate Bill 1077, which is a Ban the Box bill, which prohibits an employer asking if they've had a felony record. It's a blanket statement on the application. So yes, you can ask if they have a felony in a financial type of crime and they are trying to be a financial advisor, an accountant, that's one thing. But you can't just say if you have a felony record that you're not eligible for any type of employment. And so this is a great way to start the process of helping to incorporate individuals with justice-involved backgrounds into work. I will tell you the companies that I work with that are fair chance employers have an exceedingly high success rate. Whenever they are very, very intentional about being a second chance employer, because they have to work somewhere, right? And this is how we're going to break those cycles, is focusing on that. And then another House Bill 1792, I wasn't able to find any updates on that as well, but more progress to be made there.
Next up is veterans. Another big kind of misconceptions is veterans have a drastically higher unemployment rate in accordance to the normal population. And this is actually a misconception according to what we found. Veterans actually have a lower unemployment rate than the average population. So another kind of misconception that we were able to kind of clear up with this study, as well as they actually have a higher median income. So those are kind of two big finds with veterans here.
And I would say that's the state of Oklahoma. If there's one area that we've made some really good progress as far as engaging veterans in the workplace, we're doing a decent job in that in our state.
As far as homelessness goes, we are number 6 in the U.S. right now. And then that chart on the side there, that line graph, you can see percent income as far as it goes to rent. So you can see around 20% there, 50% of their income goes to rent. So obviously that's not necessarily ideal as far as housing expenses go, and is definitely a contributor toward homelessness as we're seeing it today.
And obviously an impact on workforce development, so that's why we included that there. All right, is this where I'm picking it up, I think? So we're going to transition a little bit and talk about education and career readiness. And I know we've gone quickly. We can go back to anything that anyone's got questions on and wants to talk about further. We want to make sure that we've got time for a good discussion at the end. So a couple of different data sources that we used on this. We lean on the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education. Couple stats that they cited: by 2027, 70% of jobs will require post-secondary education. By 2030, more than half of Oklahoma's 100 critical occupations will require an associate's degree or higher. 56% of job postings from top employers in the state required an associate's degree or higher. And then median wages for positions requiring post-secondary education or higher were $30,000 higher than positions just requiring a high school diploma. That's significant. To me, that was the one that really stuck out to me. And then also when we look at labor force participation, those rates go much higher as we see educational attainment go up. So the study showed 56.6% participation rate for high school graduates and a 70% participation rate for those with a bachelor's degree or higher. You can see a breakdown here, Oklahoma, where the blue bars, the U.S. average is the orange bars, and so this is where we line up with our population and educational attainment. So where do we have higher blue bars than orange? We have more people in our state with just a high school degree or diploma compared to the national averages. Same with some college. And then that flips as we get to associates, bachelor's degree, as well as graduate. We have fewer people in Oklahoma that have achieved that educational attainment level compared to the national average. And I think that's something that we've known in this state. We've been focusing on it. And we've made some really good strides when it comes to education in Oklahoma, specifically on this slide. So we're increasing our high school graduation rates, and we are drastically decreasing the amount of individuals that have less than a 9th grade education or 9th to 12th with no diploma. So the percentage of the population in those categories are decreasing. We're seeing high school graduation go up. That's a great step in the right direction, and so continuing to focus on those outcomes. This slide is a little messy to think about and wrap your brain around, but what this is showing is it's an educational attainment mismatch. And so the blue bar is indicating jobs requiring that education level, and then orange is saying how many percent of the population actually have that education level. So for a high school diploma or equivalent, what this is saying is that there are more jobs requiring just a high school diploma than what the population lines up with that, right? And then if we go a little bit further, it says, okay, some college, we have a smaller portion that require that, but a larger portion of the population that fall in there. For a bachelor's degree, we have more jobs requiring it than what we have people available. One of the themes that I hope starts to pop up is I think we need to quit focusing on just adding jobs, adding jobs, adding jobs. We need to focus on adding quality jobs that require people to have, advanced education, even, beyond a high school degree, but more complex jobs that pay better. Because at the end of the day, adding more jobs, we've got plenty of jobs right now in the state of Oklahoma. We've got more jobs than we have people to fill them, but we have a lot of low-paying jobs. And so we want to make that pivot and make that transition, because at the end of the day, when people are making more money, they're putting more money back into the economy. And so focusing there. When you look at if you go to the Department of Commerce's website and the incentives for companies to come to Oklahoma, it's all about job creation, job creation, job creation. There's one that focuses on the quality of jobs, but the only kind of level in there is they've defined like a salary level, but not really speaking to the specific skill sets. And so more can be done in that space of really encouraging those high quality jobs. Just a couple of things that I'll point out here. So the Oklahoma State Regions have a Blueprint 2030. If you're really interested in where higher education is going in Oklahoma, I'd recommend looking up this report. It's a very, very easy read. But a few trends that they saw, so we have a decrease in younger populations right now in our state. So high school graduation classes are going to peak by 2026 and then start declining from there. And this next one is the one that I think keeps me up at night the most. When it comes to college readiness for the 2022 graduating class in Oklahoma, only 10% of students met all 4 ACT college readiness benchmarks, and only 6% were ready to pursue STEM majors. We've got a lot of work to do in that area. Of course, the pandemic played a role, right? That was very, very difficult for students that were in high school during that time. Learning was very different, but we've got a long way to go to make sure that our kids are college ready.
All right, Abby, say that again. We need to hear that one more time.
You need to hear that whole thing one more time? That last part is that we've got a lot to do to ensure that our kids are college ready, because right now they're not making the mark. And I can tell you as a professor, they come to us and then we're losing them. And it's not entirely their fault. It's really not their fault at all. They're not equipped with the study skills that they need to be successful. Did I hit it for you, Tim? All right. Okay, so we're going to spend our last few minutes talking about who is doing it well. We want to highlight just a couple of employers, organizations, initiatives that we've seen in the state that we get really, really fired up about. We're hearing, you've heard the terms reskilling and upskilling probably quite a bit. Upskilling is when we want employees to learn new information and skills that can help them do their current job better, right? We're going to take your current skill level and your current position and make that higher. Reskilling means you were doing this job. We're going to have you in kind of a similar job, but it requires a new set of skills, and we're going to reskill you for that type of position. If you haven't heard of Upskill Oklahoma, you should Google it, check it out. It's a great organization where we're seeing that employers and educational institutions are coming together to partner to come up with micro-credentials so that individuals in the workforce can quickly attain those micro-credentials and those skills to go into new careers. When it comes to talent development, so it's not just higher ed, we need companies to be training their employees and ensuring that they've got the right leadership development, that they're supporting their employees in that journey as well. Man, Love's Travel Stops, they're doing it well. They've got 42 different states. They've got regional managers, store managers, all across the gamut. And they've got the most intentional leadership development program that I've ever seen. Part of it they facilitate internally. Part of it they'll bring in people from OSU to do training and development. But man, we want to highlight them as someone that's been doing it really well when it comes to preparing. And that's a huge portion of their workforce that may not have a high school education or only has a high school diploma. And they're really equipping those people to be successful and move to the next level. Jasco products. I wasn't familiar with Jasco until recently and stumbling upon this story, but they invested $40 million in automating a significant portion of their warehouse in Oklahoma City. They were able to expand their warehouse capacity by 70%, and no, they didn't lay a single person off. But when you look at these warehouses, I worked in manufacturing, finding a material handler that's going to work for you for the price of what a material handler is in the market, it's a really hard position to keep filled. And so automating those types of jobs so we can then create higher quality, better paying jobs, I think that's a wonderful solution to be able to, A, keep people employed and keep them in good quality jobs. And then the last folks that we will highlight are companies that are doing it well when it comes to flexibility. Flexibility is always going to be a competitive advantage for employers. And yes, we can sit here and debate the whole on-site, remote, in-person, virtual all day long. At the end of the day, whatever flexibility you can offer your employees to meet the demands that they have in their personal life, I think the better off you're going to be. And notice that 3 of the companies up here are oil and gas. One Oak, Explorer Pipeline, Devon Energy, they've figured out how to offer flexible work arrangements. American Fidelity has done it. And to me, if they can do it in the type of operations that they have, just about any industry can. So I've really seen manufacturing and energy leading the way when it comes to offering more flexibility. I don't mean 100% virtual. I just mean being able to let someone work the last hour of their day from home if they can get their kid off the bus and not have to hire after-school daycare. those little things can make a huge impact and a big difference. So we flew through a lot of this to make sure that we have time for questions. The last company we'll recognize is OG&E. They've done a lot to partner with K through 12 all the way through higher education. They're giving scholarships to students that are pursuing energy-related careers. So we're happy to go back. If you have questions specifically for these guys, they will be happy to take them as well.
You said that one of the things we need to do is create better jobs, or jobs that will use people, pay more money, whatever. In the last couple of years, we've heard about big American corporations that would hire those kinds of people, choosing not to or locate in Oklahoma. And some of the comments have been because of the conservative government, the decisions, the school systems, all kinds of conservative policies. Are you seeing that?
So the only thing I can speak to is, I would say, direct information that I've received, like from Leslie Osborne. We've had her come to speak. And so, of course, for companies, they're not going to relocate here if the public schools aren't up to par. The other thing, Tesla, one of the major reasons they didn't come here is because we didn't have enough engineers, they felt, to meet their needs. But then we also heard the Panasonic story from Leslie when she was here. I don't have any direct interaction with that story, so I don't feel appropriate, re-quoting or anything like that. But I think that definitely plays a role.
Would you go back to the slide with the handicaps?
Yes. Which one?
The next, you just missed it. There you go. So that totals more than 100%. Can you explain no disability? Is it any disability?
So no disability, employment within disability status. So of the people, and they actually, this disability status report, they call their working age 21 to 64. Is that right, Oliver? They were the one. So of the 21-64, they're saying people without a disability that fall in that category, 79% of them are working. Of the people that do have a disability between 21 and 64, only 43.9% of them are working. Did that help clarify it? Okay.
Okay. Question.
Yes.
Basically, I've got two questions. First, your graph on employees and unemployed and so on. Is there any consideration given in those calculations to know what percentage of those people that we have working right now are here illegally, are unregistered people that's included in your calculations? And the second one would be, is there any reason why homeless seems to be much less in the South, basically Alabama, Mississippi, than it is in the other states?
I'll be honest, a lot of my focus is right here in Oklahoma, so I haven't been able to do a lot of that comparison, on the homelessness side. And I don't have any data, so anything I would be saying would be my gut, which isn't fair. On the employment side, we're using U.S. Census data, and so if they're employed and they're getting a paycheck and they're counted in that, they're going to be in our numbers here. I haven't been able to find anything with a good breakdown, though. I know exactly what you're talking about. What we've seen in Oklahoma, though, is the biggest increase that we've had is net in-migration from other states, domestic migration, not international migration. There has been a component of that, but illegal migration.
So if what the employees are using the pay that they have is what they're using, whether it's legal or not legal.
Yes, yeah. I'm sorry, and I wish I had more information on that.
Abby,
Yeah.
on the homeless situation in Oklahoma, the numbers, how do they quantify that? I think it'd be very hard to get those kind of numbers.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we cite all of our sources here. This comes from the December 2023 Oklahoma Criminal Justice Data Snapshot. And I will say, not that I want to link homelessness with criminal stats, but criminal stats have been increasingly more difficult to find, and there was something that happened in 2022 that made the reporting requirements change. And so if you go to OSBI's website right now, you can't find anything beyond 2020. And so that's why we have a hard time getting some updated criminal stats. I'd have to go and dig into specifically where they get this from, but that's the data source that we used for this one.
I want to ask before Dr. McKeever, because he's a lot smarter than me. The elephant in the room on your stats on the preparedness for college
Yeah.
is that we're not preparing students for college in elementary and secondary ed. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
correct? Okay. And I know a professor that's maybe sitting to my right that talked about how our bell curve, we don't have the bell curve anymore. We have and I thought that was very interesting, and the group needs to know that. But every time we try to put higher standards on secondary and elementary ed, all hell breaks loose. And Janet Barisi had this deal, and I know she's polarizing, but we're on third grade. If you didn't get a certain efficiency, you could not pass, and it lasted for 1 year. And then we got the parents involved, and then we started moving them through again. Am I accurate on what I'm saying?
I
mean,
mean,
because the elephant in the room, we have someone running for school board over here that hopefully can help this, but these stats are horrific.
they are horrific, and I will say, go check out that Blueprint 2030. I will say the state regions have a very, very focused strategy on how to help with this. Now, a lot of theirs is focusing immediately in high school, but you're right, it trickles all the way down.
Well, it starts at third grade if you can't read. But instead of being solid and demanding these things, we seem to have gotten in a habit of just pushing people through a system.
Yeah, we have.
And we're more worried about ADA than we are in our funding on our results. So, anyway, I mean.
Yeah, great point. Yes.
Abby, following Chris's comment there, in addition to the gap between high school graduation average skills and first year college average skills, you also mentioned the need for quality jobs as opposed to any kind of job. Now, I remember those two issues being in many discussion groups, many conferences, even as long ago as 15 years ago, talking about exactly the same things. So it's not like these are new things for the state. The state has been up against these problems for 2 decades. So my question is there any indication in the data that we have made improvements in either of those two areas?
So, I mean, the improvements on the education that I see the most is that we're increasing our high school graduation rate, right? And yeah, but to the point, if we're just pushing people through, I mean that. Exactly, the quantity versus the quality. So I'm not an expert in the K-12 side, but it's been an issue for a long time. I was just on the phone with people in Kentucky that are facing similar issues, and they're trying to get more visibility into it. But it's obviously, these are all things that we've been talking about for a while and can't seem to crack it. And the quality jobs. That, to me, that's we need to change our incentive structure and stop incentivizing for just job creation left and right, and really focus on what are the skill sets and what's the pay associated there. To me, that's kind of an easier one, but yeah.
Okay, so this question addresses what I, being an older guy, would call VOTEC, but Meridian Technology Center being an example. So I'm aware that when we had some of our larger employees besides Health and OSU, Armstrong, Mercruiser, et cetera, were looking at Stillwater. They were very impressed with what came out of Meridian Tech. And my question is there an overlap between what you guys are trying to do and what Meridian Tech does, where training for more or less specific types of jobs and also tailor-making training for the needs of a particular industry that wants to come here? So my question is, I've always been a little concerned that maybe because many of us came through higher ed, OSU, et cetera, working toward the degrees versus the associate degree or even Okmulgee type certifications, whether there's a bias toward, quote, higher ed in any of this data, and do you include Meridian, the kinds of things Meridian Tech does in your data?
So great question. I'm going to try to answer it quickly because I know we're at time. Sorry, Kara. We could talk after. Couple things to that. I will say there's a bigger focus that higher education and VOTEC and the career tech system start working together. The Governor's New Workforce Commission, I met with them 2 weeks ago, and that's a big, focus area of what they're talking about. I will tell you that I was at OSU IT a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about how we can actually start working together as a system. We haven't ever before. The data here that I'm speaking about, associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees, all of that's going to be linked to what the state regents classify as an associate's degree as a bachelor's degree. So it would depend on, what that program is, but there's a lot of industry partnerships that are happening at Meridian with the Line Tech and a lot of things like that that are helping, I guess, get people aligned, their education aligned with what industry's asking for. So that's as much as I have on that one in that short amount of time. Okay.
Oh, no, Carrie, you're done.